Hello and welcome to Lecture 5 of ETP series. I'm Dr. Sonia Khan. In this lecture, I will continue my discussion on activity theory. Previously, I discussed the growth and development of activity theory from Generation 1 to Generation 2. I discussed the various components of an activity system and its underlying principles. The third generation activity theory moves its focus away from one activity system or one work unit to a network of interacting organizations. It involves boundary crossing and requires minimal two interacting systems. So as you see in the figure, the activity systems are self-sufficient, but they have a partially shared object. The object here is a moving target. It is not reducible to short-term goals. How do these activity systems discuss about this partially shared object, which they think might be problematic or is troublesome? So how do they come to conclusions about it? They meet occasionally to interact and develop contradictions, and thereby form new meanings or new working model. And this meeting or this kind of interaction involves expansive learning, which one can understand as a collective journey through zone of proximal development of an activity. You've heard this phrase, zone of proximal development, when I refer to Vygotsky's zone of proximal development of learning. So for Vygotsky, it referred to individual learning, from actual development to potential development. It involved the concept of new formation. I have discussed all this in my previous lectures. In activity theory, the same concept is applied to collective journey of learning. So the question is, how do these different activity systems or different organizations engage with the partially shared object or engaged in relation to partially shared object? They meet occasionally to interact, and through that they then develop contradictions and try to form new meanings or new working model. And this entire process is referred to as expansive learning cycle, which can be understood as a collective journey through the zone of proximal development of an activity. So the concept is derived from Vygotskyan concept of zone of proximal development, but in this situation, it's related to an activity and growth and development of organizations rather than individual learning. Let's say there are three activity systems involved: the General Healthcare Center, Diet and Weight Management Center, and patient's family. Now, a member of patient's family visits the General Health Center and in a couple of days is diagnosed with diabetes. The physician there also advises him or refers him to the Diet and Weight Management Center so that he could enroll in programs there and understand how he might change his lifestyle to control his condition. The contradiction is that the patient is moving between the two organizations. There is lack of coordination between the two organizations. Other problem that arises is that each time the patient visits General Health Center, he meets a different physician. So as a result, each time he goes, his case kind of starts again. So such a situation demands expansive solution, and that is where there is an urgency for these organizations to meet and talk. So they meet at a certain location, and there is General Health Center on one side, the Diet and Weight Management Center on the other side. You have patient and his family on one side, and then you have researchers or people who are helping them identify the problem or identify a triggering conflictual question of their standard practice. First thing that comes to the fore during the discussion is lack of coordination between the two organizations, General Health Center and Diet and Weight Management Center. Both of them are putting the blame on the other. Each one is stating that we do send the reports to you, but we do not get the reports. So there's kind of a deadlock. The discussion has taken a shape of interlocking defensive positions. However, as the discussion continues, there is someone who states that, all right, let's go and check whether the reports are sent. Now, it's not that people will literally go and find whether the reports were sent, but that kind of breaks the deadlock. Another thing important here is that since the patient's family is also present, both General Health Center or the Diet and Weight Management Center find it impossible to put the blame on them. And thereby it adds to the urgency of double bind, that is finding problems in their standard practice. And that's where both sides then come up with problems within the system. One of the problems that's highlighted then is probably that there is lack of information about the patient. There's lack of information about the medication that he's taken, the kind of guidance or counseling that he's been given. And therefore it becomes difficult to take appropriate action. Again, it highlights the importance of sending the reports. So a suggestion comes, all right, so what do? Let's send reports each time the patient visits us. This is called modeling in expansive learning cycle. However, this suggestion is not taken easily. It's not accepted for reasons like efficiency and time consuming. It might involve a lot of paperwork. It might involve people just sending mails throughout the day. So it might be time consuming as well. So it is still connected to the primary contradiction of quality versus efficiency. However, the discussion goes on, and the next solution that comes is that, all right, let's send reports, but let's decide when do we send it. Then someone suggests that, all right, let's send the reports when patient makes the third visit to either of the centers. And then we would start sharing information with each other. This is accepted. But then the next question is, who takes the responsibility? Now there are 3 organizations involved. So each one will have to share responsibility. Patient's family can also not suspend their responsibility thinking that it's the responsibility of General Health Center or the Diet and Weight Management Center. So agreement is made. Each one is given that agreement, and this situation is called not working. You tie a knot where 3 parties get together and agree that yes, each one of us take responsibility of this partially shared object, which in this case is a diabetic patient. So the coordinator is designated who would take care of the patient's network and trajectories of each of these organizations. And finally, the agreement is given to family, the health center, and the Diet and Weight Management Center. So you see that there is a change in the way in which the activities systems work. There is a change from working separately to working as a network. Also, there is a change in the way family responds to patient's health. Instead of putting all responsibility to the 2 centers, they also have to take ownership of patient's health condition, of improving patient's health condition. So this new model is implemented, and that's where then tertiary contradictions come forward, which is the struggle between old ways of doing things and the new ways of doing things. So then again, there will be some problems. Then the next step is reflection on the agreement plan based on these tertiary contradictions. Adjustments are made to the agreement plan, and finally the plan is consolidated. So that completes one expansive learning cycle. However, it is not necessary that in each case it would just involve one expansive cycle. It might involve several. So this kind of can go on and on for some time. It can be a lengthy process. Let us now relate this expansive learning cycle with the 5 principles. So here are the 5 principles: activity system, multi-voicedness, historicity, contradictions, and expansive learning. The matrix of analysis answers 4 questions. Who are learning? Why are they learning? What are they learning? and how are they learning. So let's start with first, who are learning? There are 3 activity systems involved. So all 3 of them are learning. Then multi-voiceness. It involves specialized voices from the General Health Center and the Diet and Weight Management Center, and also lay voice of home care. The next question is, why are they learning? The patient is moving between centers with no improvement in his condition. Also, the systems are working according to old protocols and are working separately. And the contradiction here is then between the object of activity and rules in the activity system. The next is, what is that they are learning? They're learning a new pattern of work that has emerged from their interactions with each other. They've understood not working and responsibility sharing. So in historicity, there is coexistence between old protocols and care agreement, which is a new protocol. Contradiction, it involves struggle and requires adjustment to the new norm. And expansive learning here is, there is an expansion of the object from patient physician or patient specialist to a network of care. And lastly, how they learned? Through dialogue, listening to different voices focused on the object. The contradiction here is that problem is changed to a need state through a question, then moved to a double bind, resistance, realignment, and I've already discussed expansive learning, so I would not explain that here. Now, one of the concerns of activity systems that has been raised by Daniels is that it does not address power relations. It does not address how rules regulate the thinking of individuals that work within them. So I will try to discuss this aspect in my next lecture. For now, let's just focus on the next generation of activity theory. The 4th generation activity theory seeks to go beyond mediated actions to heterogeneous coalitions between organizations across the globe. So they're kind of expanding their dimensions in relation to temporality, spatiality, and sociality. And also the object of activity in such heterogeneous coalitions would be runaway objects. These are contested objects that generate opposition or controversies. For example, poverty or homelessness. I will end this lecture with the slide that I left even previously in my lecture. So you could see in 3rd generation, there is a slight change in unit of analysis. It's now interacting activity systems instead of collective activity system. And then the object and problem is a moving object, partially shared, contradictions demanding expansive solutions. And the 4th generation, we're talking about runaway objects. And unit of analysis is something that the researchers are finding problematic to understand for now. So they're still trying to understand or consider different ways in which they could understand what could be the unit of analysis in heterogeneous coalitions. So that's it about activity theory. In my 2 lectures on it, I have tried to give you a succinct view of what activity theory involves and what are the key concepts within it. These lectures will provide you the foundation by means of which then you can delve deeper into these concepts. And I would also urge you, I have put references, please look at those, and if you want to learn more, go through those books. These are really very helpful, and these lectures will support you in your understanding of activity theory more deeply. So if you've liked my lectures, please subscribe my channel, share with your friends, send in your comments, and see you soon. Thank you.